Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the third webinar in our Horizon series. LRIC initiated this series of webinars as part of our mission to help create a better future for the livestock value chain. The topics covered in this webinar series are having and will have direct impact on the future of Ontario's livestock sector. Each webinar is complemented with a white paper, co-authored by myself and Chloe Neudorf, with invaluable input from a well-known and respected expert in the topic area. You can find all of the white papers and recordings of the webinars on our website, livestockresearch.ca. During the presentation, please send your questions along using the Q&A function, and at the end, Jean Howden will bring questions forward for discussion following the presentation. And now I'll ask Chloe to introduce today's speaker. Enjoy the session.
Thank you, Mike. Today, we are pleased to welcome Jean Szkotnicki, former president of the Canadian Animal Health Institute for 29 years. Jean Szkotnicki is the contributing editor to the third white paper on antimicrobial use and resistance in livestock, and is here to speak on that topic. Jean was the recipient of the Canadian Animal Health Institute Industry Leadership Award in 2020. Known for her collaborative approach to animal health in Canada, she left a positive impact on veterinary medicine and animal well-being. Jean is known for improving government relations, creating new policies, and providing innovative solutions for the animal health industry. Jean is LRIC's Antimicrobial Use and Resistance in Livestock expert.
Thank you, Chloe, for the kind introductions. It's good to be here, and always an interesting topic to talk about antimicrobial resistance, and a little bit different today than talking about COVID-19. But indeed, like COVID-19, antimicrobial use and resistance is a global issue. My job today is to talk to you about the Canadian strategic direction that was taken recently to lead to more responsible use of antimicrobials in Canada. It involved federal, provincial cooperation, as well as collaboration with industry and the veterinary profession. And the work actually continues to today. Before going any further, I think one of the things that we really need to think about is what are antimicrobials and antibiotics, because the terms get used interchangeably. Indeed, the antimicrobials are the broad category of substances that kill or prevent the growth of microorganisms. So like the antifungals and the antiparasiticides. But here today, we're going to be talking about antibiotics, which are a type of antimicrobial substance that is active against bacteria. They're widely used in the treatment and prevention of bacterial infections in both human medicine and animal medicine. Antibiotic use and resistance, there's just one given, and that if we're going to be using an antibiotic, we are going to be developing resistance. Because while some bacteria die when the antibiotics are used, others can become, can stay alive and mutate and even multiply. And this results in treatment failures in both human and animal medicine. Global strategies to ensure responsible use of antibiotics in human and animal medicine have been ongoing, and they are there to ensure that we have antibiotics that are effective in treating bacterial infections in medicine. You can see in the timeline below about antibiotic discovery and resistance timeline that even with the penicillins, which was the first of our antibiotic that was discovered, almost 10 years later, we had resistance showing up. And that's happened over the different classes of antibiotics that have been developed. We've had no new classes of antibiotics developed in the last 30 years. And indeed, one of the things that we really, why this is such an important topic is because we need to have these antibiotics to make sure that we are able to treat human diseases as they arise, and indeed animal diseases. Zoonotic diseases are also something that we really need to have an understanding of. And these are diseases that have animal to human transfer and vice versa, human to animal transfer of the disease. We need to take a One Health approach to managing these kind of resistances because of the interaction, the broad interactions between different species. When we look at what a foodborne transfer would be from animals to human, we can think of salmonellosis and Campylobacter, E. coli. That's in the chart beside you, and that would occur in food. We would also be looking at direct and indirect contact with bacteria like Staphylococcus or Chlamydia or Bartonella species of bacteria, which is the cat scratch fever. So it's important that our livestock industry, because of these kind of interactions and the fact that many of the emerging diseases that humans are going to be facing will be transferred from animals. And that is according to the WHO. I've seen stats as high as 65 to 75% of the new diseases that will occur in human medicine will be coming from animals. So to have oversight and responsible use of the medically important antimicrobials, Canada's taken actions that are really aligned with other developed countries. Importantly, as of December 1st, 2018, medically important antimicrobials can only be sold through the use of a veterinary prescription, so that allows for the veterinary oversight, and no longer do any of the medically important antimicrobials have growth promotion claims in Canada. And this was work that was done by the Veterinary Drugs Directorate in consultation with the industry and with the provinces. And the provinces, where applicable, working through their livestock medicines outlet programs and regulation to ensure that medically important antimicrobials could no longer be sold through them. So the categorization of the medically important antimicrobials is that there are indeed 4 categories, but 3 that are very important. The very high importance antimicrobials are antimicrobials for which there's serious human infection and there are no alternative treatments. That is the antibiotic of choice and the only one that works against that disease. High importance, again, high importance in treating human infection, but there may be some alternative antimicrobials that can be used to treat those diseases. And then again, the medium importance, not as important to human infection, and yes, that there are alternatives likely to treat those diseases. Of low importance and not a medically important antimicrobial are the antimicrobials that do not, or antibiotics that do not have an impact on resistance in either the animal population or the human population, and that's products such as Rumensin used in beef cattle. So we do have regulatory oversight of veterinary antibiotics, and that really is the responsibility of the Veterinary Drugs Directorate of Health Canada. This has been a really critical issue for the Directorate in the last 5 years, I would say. A lot of focus going into the work. The role of the VDD, or the Veterinary Drugs Directorate, is that it is responsible for evaluating and monitoring the safety, quality, and effectiveness of the drugs that we use here in Canada. They also set standards for food safety and promote the responsible use of veterinary drugs in pets and food-producing animals. So in the next slide, what I'd like you to really focus on, one of the things that the Veterinary Drugs Directorate has done that I think is really responsible is in developing labels with countries for the medically important antimicrobials in the category 1, of antimicrobials, those that are important for treating infection and for which there are no alternatives. They have said, and if you'd go to the red part of the text, the label for a product, a fluoroquinolone product used in cattle will say, not for mass use in mass medication of cattle or swine, necessary to treat the individual animal cases. They say the most appropriate treatment should be confirmed, have confirmatory experience with pathogen culture and drug susceptibility, and do not use these products extra label in cattle, swine, or any other species. So this is the type of safety standard they would establish beyond the one that many of the producers are used to of withdrawal times. This is the type of label claim that would be used for resistance, and then there are label claims with withdrawal periods to prevent harmful residues in the food supply, which is a totally different issue. We also, too, have an agency within the Public Health Agency that runs a program called you need stars for remembering this name. It's so long, but it's the CPARS, the Canadian Integrated Program for Antimicrobial Resistance Surveillance. And this program was developed in Canada on a very modest budget, but is recognized worldwide to be aligned with what other countries are doing. We have the Danish Integrated Antimicrobial Monitoring and Resistance Program. You've got the names of the different programs and links to them on the table beside you. But the role of a group like CPARS is to monitor the trends in antimicrobial use and antimicrobial resistance in selected bacterial organisms from humans and animals and food sources across Canada. So this is an important role so that we can take measures if indeed there are outstanding issues that are found to be arising. So one of the things that I think is important in this slide, and this comes from the CPARS groups, and it is looking at the 4 different categories of antimicrobials, but the blue bars are the products used in animals, and the yellow bars are the products used in the drug products used in humans. And 75% of the antimicrobials or antibiotics used in livestock medicine or food animal medicine are from the category 4, so not important from a resistance standpoint, and the category 3, so the least important, the not as important category. Whereas in human medicine, they are using about 75% of the medications they use are in the category 1 and category 2, so most important for use for dealing with resistance and treating disease in the human population. So there are other risk management measures in place. It's not just government that takes action. Certainly producer groups across Canada and around the world are taking biosecurity measures to make sure that what disease is in the barn stays in the barn, and diseases outside the barn stay out. So it's a lot like what we're doing in COVID now, where we're staying home and preventing the spread of disease from taking, a diseased person. Potentially, I guess the premier was thought to have been exposed to COVID, and so he was staying put and that way not able to spread the disease. We also have Chicken Farmers of Canada that took the measure on a voluntary basis to eliminate the use of category 1 antimicrobials, the most important antimicrobials in human medicine, and to eliminate the use of category 2 antimicrobials for preventative purposes. We will need to continue to do research on alternatives to antimicrobials. This is a very important endeavor, as you can see, because there are no new classes of antibiotics coming forward. We'll also have to do research and innovation that will lead to healthy animals. And I contend, and there's a lot of agreement within the One Health scenario that healthy animals leads to healthy people, leads to a healthy environment. And this whole area is so integrated in how it needs to be dealt with, meaning that we will need to continue to do the collaboration so that we can manage antimicrobial resistance and keep our animals healthy. So I'll end there and we'll start with questions.
Thanks very much, Jean. Really appreciate the information you've shared with us. That I've got one question kind of to start off with, and it regards, you know, mRNA is something that to me, it's new to me, but when you look into it, it was technology or a process that was discovered, I think 30 years ago, but just kind of limped along, and then COVID came along and all of a sudden it really took off. How is, you know, is mRNA technology going to be a big game changer for AMR or not?
Yeah, it's a hard thing to predict. You know, there's no question that sometimes some of these things stay the same, but there are nuances of differences in how we manage the risks of using the antibiotics. And I think we can safely say that we will get better at it. We will look to new technologies like vaccine production, just as we're doing with COVID, to try to manage and prevent the disease outbreak. So I think we're going to be seeing that type of work continue. And it's not, my guess is it won't be at lightning speed. It'll be very evolutionary. And it's a long process in innovation and research and innovation.
And okay, taking another turn at it. What role do probiotics play in providing an alternative to antibiotics?
Well, certainly one of the measures that was taken by Health Canada in changing, when the rules were changed, the policy and regulation was changed relative to use of antibiotics, was to also open up a class of drugs called the veterinary health products. And this will include the prebiotics, the probiotics, and other alternatives. And they will, there are products in the marketplace, generally thought to, you know, we're looking to have these products so that they colonize the gut with healthy bacteria, making which will then keep animals healthy, or to prevent the growth of the unhealthy bacteria that make animals sick. So that process is in place, and there are products now in the marketplace. And I believe the Canadian Food Inspection Agency is in the process of looking to how do we incorporate some of these into feed as well to keep animals healthy. So the bottom line is, I think they're going to be play an important part in the future, and we're at early stages of discovery and working on getting viable commercial products into the marketplace.
Now, would antifungals be good into that group as well, or are they a completely different group?
Well, they would be antifungals that are an antimicrobial, and they could be, there could be a possibility to have those in the products, in like a feed product, or made into a drug product for sure.
All right. Another question here. What are your thoughts on how the various livestock sectors can work together to help avoid AMR?
I think the livestock sectors have done a really good job on working to build biosecurity programs into their into their production units. I think moving animals from the farm to the processing, we also need to make sure that as products move down the food chain, that again, we don't further contaminate by human exposure potentially, or just contamination from the kill floor, etc., that we do not further contaminate these products. But if one looks at the CPAR records, we have excellent standards in Canada, and we have been managing bacterial infections fairly well, and haven't had tremendous issues relative to exposure in the food supply. But I think that it all involves biosecurity, managing feed trucks, disinfecting before they come on farm and deliver a new load of feed, etc. You're going to, we need to be very conscious of how we manage those diseases and restrict their being brought into a farm or being taken from the farm.
Good. Interesting. So back to a question regarding how has COVID-19 affected AMR for everyday producers?
Well, it's changed all our lives, whether you're a producer or not, that's for sure. But I don't think it, I think farmers are essential workers. So we're able to continue the work that we were doing on the farm. I think probably accessing some of the trades and some of the services that we might have wanted to access because of lockdowns is been restrictive. But generally speaking, I think to some extent it's been business as usual, because of farming being considered an essential part of a societal need.
I know that when we were talking and doing some planning for the webinar, somewhat of a light bulb moment for me came along in the fact that to do with epidemiology of diseases and managing herds, livestock and veterinarians have done it for years. The medical profession does it on a per person basis, and the treatment there, I'm not just sure that I've got a question out of that, but it was just really interesting.
Yeah, I think has been very good at dealing with populations, because if a herd or a flock, if there are individuals that are showing signs of disease, then one assumes that the whole flock or herd has been challenged and are treating that. And I think it's been a novel experience for many human medical officials in dealing with COVID, in that they are not just treating the individual that has a disease now, they are treating the population and trying to prevent the spread of that disease.
So that, and that just leads us right into kind of the One Health, which One Health will be our next webinar as well. But I've got a question regarding current research and innovation tends to be sector specific, while the One Health approach brings all sectors together along with human and environmental groups. What steps should the livestock sector take to best be proactive as part of creating the future?
You know what, I'm going to pin it to collaboration. You can't do it in isolation. We can't, be in our silos. We really need to reach out. We need to probably have holistic One Health sessions so that we can identify the issues and figure out how to work through them together, just as we did the transfer of many of these products, these antibiotics, from being non-prescription to prescription. It took a lot of collaboration and goodwill, and the job got done in 2018. Considering how big a job it was, I think it went relatively smoothly. So collaboration is going to be the key.
Okay, great. To what extent do you think benchmarking of AMU is needed or even possible, either within livestock species or between species?
Yeah, it's a very hard thing to do. We do have one form of benchmarking in the sense of data is collected on what antimicrobials are used in veterinary medicine and just generally speaking, but we do not have that data by species at this point in time. As technology increases, will there be the ability to collect data on a confidential basis from veterinary records? Likely there will be, and that this could be accumulated. But again, it's going to take that collaboration and goodwill, because much of this information people want to be confidential in some ways. And how do we keep the robustness of the data with honoring people's right to privacy?
Thanks. Well, I'm not seeing any further questions at this time. I do have a question just regarding the antimicrobials are the same in the drugs we give to can be the same between people and animals, but are their purity levels different? Like if my dog, if I'm giving my, you know, my sheep an antibiotic for something, could I take the same antibiotic?
Well, I suggest that that antibiotic is labeled for your livestock, and it may be at different concentrations. But what the basis of the active for an antibiotic is the active pharmaceutical ingredient. And yes, there are standards for those products, and they actually need to meet, in many cases for the medically important antimicrobials, good manufacturing standards for sure, both on the human and animal side. So there are high standards of quality for the products. They are again monitored by Health Canada for good manufacturing practices. And you would find that in a lot of cases, you know, what changes is you may have the same active, but very, very different dosage regime and different indications, because we're dealing with, you know, the human species is different than the ruminant, is different than the poultry species, etc. So you've got to look at those label claims and what's been approved by the Veterinary Drugs Directorate. I wouldn't be going and taking those drugs yourself.
I didn't think so, but I just wanted to check. Okay, some more questions coming in. Do you think ELDU in minor species, sheep and goats, is a weak spot in terms of development of resistance? And what does ELDU stand for?
Extra label drug use. I actually don't think it's necessarily a weakness in resistance necessarily, because again, we will have veterinary oversight of the use of those products. And we will have monitoring of the food supply for resistance to see if there are problems. What I think ELDU is, though, is a weakness of the process for approving products for minor species, because there's not a large enough market supply. There's little market interest. There's little interest in commercializing those products. So are there other ways that we can get those products registered? And we did have a 3-way review of a product for sheep, meloxicam, to manage pain in sheep. The review was done by New Zealand, Australia, and Canada. Canada did the human safety, Australia the efficacy, the animal efficacy, and New Zealand the manufacturing standards for the review of that product. And I think we need to be looking at alternative processes for getting these kind of products registered that are just more cost effective and timely, so that these producers can, the minor use producers can have access to products. So I would not be as worried about resistance, but more worried about the systemic problem of how do we get label claims for these products in the first place for minor species.
Thanks. Do you think that current research using machine learning and artificial intelligence to develop microbiome remedies and prevention are promising?
Anything that gets a healthier gut, I think, is worthwhile moving research in that direction. We're going to have, my guess is we'll have some wins and loses on products that are very effective and other products that are less effective. But as we get better and better at our and more sophisticated in our technology, we are going to have products that help to bring healthy, have the animals have healthy guts, again, leading to the animal being healthier and preventing those zoonotic diseases being spread to humans and preventing environmental exposure as well.
Okay, so back to some pre and probiotics. What do you think of the prospects for alternatives to antibiotics that do not create resistance? For example, antimicrobial peptides. Is there anything on the horizon, or who in Canada is working on this?
Yes, there are companies working on this. And I think one of the good measures that we've had is because there are different, we're looking at different classes of drugs that aren't antibiotics. There's been a lot of collaboration with industry in the sense of the pharmaceutical industry and other developers of these products, along with the producer groups, to find ways to register these products. What are the scientific criteria that would be necessary? And it may not be an antibiotic hurdle that we're looking at, but something to a lesser extent. And those discussions have begun already, for sure.
Okay, and then, well, to follow up on that, someone's asked if you've ever heard of ionic liquids based on active pharmaceutical ingredients as a new and upcoming research topic as new antibiotic agents.
That one's new to me, but I can check on it for sure.
So that, yeah, and back to coming out of COVID, all governments will be stretched financially. Yeah, we all know that one. And yet, funds for R&D and livestock, so for AMU, One Health, etc., will be greater than ever. How best can livestock work with government to ensure funding is needed for R&D? Any ideas on that one?
Yeah, I think that is one of my big concerns into the future is that we will have, coming out of this pandemic, we will have a deficit. How do we continue to have the funds that go into research and development? I think organizations such as LRIC will be important to increase that awareness for within government agencies, provincially and federally, to continue to fund research into alternatives and new innovation to supplant the use of antibiotics. So I come back to we may be needing to do, continue to have that effort and collaboration, but I also think we need to be collaborating with other countries so that we can actually probably reduce some of the costs of bringing these products to marketplace by working together on the review system and the approval process done to assess these products, we can do it on a intergovernmental kind of relationship, the US with Canada, et cetera, because we're on a North American market. So I think there are ways to use our own government scientists in a more expeditious way, a more effective way, and we might be looking at new processes for how do we do some of those things for registration.
Well, Jean, I want to thank you for your time you've dedicated to putting the white paper together with Chloe and for doing the webinar today. I want to thank our IT people behind the scenes by the name of Charlotte Wall with the Poultry Industry Council. She does an awesome job for us every time. I want to let you know that our next webinar will be on One Health, which actually has come up today, and it will be held on May 14th. We expect that the white paper probably will be out end of April, early May. We'll get that white paper out, but you are able to register for the webinar as of now. That, I think, concludes everything. I want to thank everybody for their participation today, and look forward to seeing you again on the 14th of May when we do One Health. Thank you, everyone. The white paper probably will be out end of April, early May. We'll get that white paper out, but you are able to register for the webinar as of now. And that, I think, concludes everything. I want to thank everybody for their participation today, and look forward to seeing you again on the 14th of May when we do One Health.